Okay, Christian art. What does it mean to be a Christian artist? Is this the Jesus you want to see here? Wonderful painting of Jesus. Titian, Italian man. Renaissance time. He took an Italian man and put him in a robe. Is that how we paint Jesus? Or do you like this one better? Would you like to see Jesus painted like this? This is pre-Renaissance. It's iconography. Do we want to paint Jesus like this with almond eyes and long skinny fingers? Is that the only Jesus that's acceptable to us now? Now I'll tell you what the Jesus is acceptable to us now. We have to go into the Christian bookstores and we have to have Jesus in a white robe, always smiling, or we can have paintings of sheep and shepherds and rocks that say Jesus is my rock, but nothing else is acceptable. Don't even try to do it. If you're an artist, give it up right now. It's not going to happen for you, okay? You're never going to do it. You cannot be an artist without having an amazing amount of judgments on you. Well, I'll tell you what. People in the church and Christians need to give artists a break and start realizing that people like Francis Schaeffer and Rookmaaker and other great writers have been calling out the artists for decades. And what has been keeping them? Christian censorship. How do you like this one, huh? How do you like this one? I put Alice in Wonderland, okay? Now that's not Christian, is it? And I've put a pack of pedophiles down here. Okay? Pedophiles in Parliament. All right? That's what I'm trying to expose. That is a legitimate calling of an artist, is to expose evil in the world. Isn't it a calling that you would have in other professions that were Christian? Judges, aren't they supposed to call this stuff out? Call out the evil? Think back to the Old Testament when the judges were around, right? Think about righteousness in the earth. Can't we expose evil? Isn't this legitimate for Christians to do? Or do Christians always have to just paint happy Jesus? All right? This is ridiculous. Stop censoring artists. Stop censoring artists. There are a lot of different ways to be Christian artists. I have a friend named J. Olstein, and he paints abstract imagery. Not completely abstract, but it's beautiful because he puts man kind of on the precipice of little huge environments that he's stuck in. And you just feel the cry of the heart of God for people stuck in a world where they feel all alone. When I look at J. Olstein's work, I love it. Here, what is a Christian artist doing painting a secular thing like Janis Joplin, all right? Well, maybe people actually relate to her, and maybe Janis Joplin had a relationship with Jesus Christ, and maybe if I paint Jesus into this 70s butterfly chair here in some way, and they're appreciating each other and communicating, well, just maybe, all right, that's a valid thing to do. Maybe this is a valid thing to do. Maybe to paint Mick Jagger on top of someone's dining room table, impressing, trying to impress someone. Maybe the folly of the way I paint the rock and roll icons of the 60s and 70s, the Jagger, the Stones, the Elvis, the Dylan. Maybe this is exposing some of the folly and some of our idol worship. When I was in graduate school, trying to figure out what my mark on Christian history, the painting of Christ was going to be, well, I had a long way to go because I started out, and if you look up here, please, I started out only knowing to copy what had been done in 2,000 years of art. So on the right, I pretty much copied just the way Christ was painted for 2,000 years. Stoic, non-emotional, very passive, very kind, holding a little baby. And I noticed that all the activities going on in the central panel or in the left panel. There's a lot of activity going on there, swirling words. There's I'm free to put in a devil type character on the left. I'm free to do that. And a devil character, and if you come over this way, cameraman, please, you'll see the television imagery. I kind of made up this garbling machine that was going to garble the words of Christ. When Christ is trying to say, I love you, you're my son, that the devil would garble those words into pig, fatty, you're a glutton, destined for the pit of hell, so that the devil, as he does, catches the words of peace and the true God and Jesus Christ, his son, and garbles them in our ears. We can't hear them anymore. That's what that was about. But as I continued to paint and figure out how I was going to paint Jesus, I continued to see, oh my gosh, 2,000 years of history, of historic Christian art, and Jesus hasn't been allowed to have any emotions? What about all the times like satire? What about humor? What about when he said to the scribes and the Pharisees, okay, you overlook the big things like justice and equity in the earth, but no, you go out to your little kitchen gardens and you've got to tithe the mint and the rue. This is how small-minded you scribes and Pharisees are? That is a damning, sarcastic thing to say to them. But he loved saying it because he was an emotional being. We know he was an emotional being. We know he wept at Lazarus's grave. But I've never seen a painting of that. I've never seen a painting of that. Have you? All right. Here's a piece of mine. This is a legitimate thing to do, which is do allegories as an artist or as a Christian artist, to do allegories. This has been done by J.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. We all know that his lion character is an allegory of Christ. So in this, we have an allegory to a girl who's trapped in a circus freak show. Her name is Angel, the snake child. And you can go see her. You can see the head of a real girl, the body of an ugly snake. At this point, but Jesus is rescuing her. I had to imagine, I never went into the tent. I went to the fair and took these pictures. That was my source material. And I had a friend pose. I was still grappling with how to paint Jesus, so I had a friend wear just a little paper mask I made with a rubber band in the back of it. All right, so allegory is a legitimate way for a Christian artist to work, or any artist to work. The idea here, the devil's maiming, crippling, free, it's free. Okay, I tagged that in. This was actually at the fair, these posters. I went home, I looked at my images, I really liked them. And like I say, I was still working with an idea of how I wanted to paint Jesus. But I was grappling with how to do it. When I came across the idea of him actually having more emotions, because it hasn't been seen in Christian art, with the exception of his anger at the money changers, right? His love and compassion, those are emotions. We've never seen Jesus wept. We've never seen all kinds of things. We've never seen these because they've been edited out. They've been edited out of over 2,000 years of Christian art. Why is this? Because emotions are bad. It's bad to be angry, right? No, it doesn't say that. It says it says be angry and don't let the sun go down upon your wrath. Emotions are not bad by themselves. I understand why people would want to put them in a box because they can be volatile. But Jesus had all this full spectrum of emotions. We do. And as long as our spirit is governing those emotions, everything's fine. And we can learn to get to the point. We don't have to edit them all out. We don't all have to be zombies for Christ. I am a zombie for Christ. I mean, that's scary. You don't want to be that way around people. You want to have a full spectrum of your emotions. You want to have your history intact. You want to be able to tell people about what it was like when you were so sad or so hurt or so wounded. And a lot of people just edit all that out too. And they're like, my life has always been perfect. I've always been a perfect Christian. I never sin. My gosh, what if the Bible did that? What if we didn't have any record of Jonah, who didn't want to go to Nineveh? What if we didn't have a record of so many people who were called and didn't even want to do what God did? Well, we'd feel like we were really messing up, didn't we? Because we often don't want to do what God asks us to. But hey, there's a long history of that, and we can learn from these people. And we know we're not alone, okay? So let's wake up, Christians. Let's get on the ball here and realize that we don't have to be all perfect all the time, and Christ is the perfect one. Okay, so in this painting, I had finally started to get into the groove of my thesis. It's my penultimate painting, and this has been picked apart by many a Christian because it is entitled, and it's showing Jesus puking. It's entitled Jesus Retched, and dispatched angels because the little children were ganging up like a pack of wolves to kill the homeless man. Now, it's set in the market. I staged and set this whole thing up pretty much and went back and worked from a bunch of photographs. I'll go more into this painting later in future YouTube, if Jesus doesn't come back by then. What are the children being marketed? When I was doing this painting, I almost said this painting's too dark. It's physically dark. It's dark, dark, dark. For decades, I've been taught Christians need to paint in a lighter palette. They have to use ice cream colors, or it's not valid Christian art. If you do dark Christian art, no. You gotta forget anything somebody's told you about Christian art, unless they are great thinkers and great writers like Rookmaaker and Francis Schaeffer and other people that I will recommend. Otherwise, it's just all gobbledygook. It makes no sense. It's not based on the Bible. There's no historical precedent for it. Like I said, all the angst, all the sorrow, Jesus' bloodline, my gosh, out of his own bloodline, yes, righteous David and all that stuff, but David also was a murderer, okay? And there was a rapist in Jesus' bloodline, okay? So how does God take and make things perfect or make them better? And that's the whole story, is how God brings things back into order that were chaotic. So our story is not we're all fixed. Our story is that we are being transformed into the image of Christ. So we don't have to paint perfectly. We don't have to have a perfect idea of how to paint Jesus. We don't have to have perfect anything. As an artist, you just start doing the work. You start doing the work, and you find out what direction you're going to. And even as I was painting this, I decided that it wasn't a powerful enough composition. It was all very flat. And when I decided to put this image in the foreground, it just pulled it all together. All right, so again, the children are being marketed by the evil one. They're being marketed, GAP, OP, that's commercialism. That's why they've gone so brain dead and so callous. They have no emotion. They have no feeling for this homeless man anymore or for anybody else. All they care about is collecting stuff, getting stuff, buying stuff, and horror. Hannibal Lecter and American Psycho. This is our culture we live in right now. And Christians need to wake up and realize that this is the culture we live in. I can't believe, I talked to some parents and people and they just don't even know what's going on with I'm doing quite a few YouTubes in comic style about pedophilia. I've got a crazy Louis XV character who comes and bam blasts Americans for not understanding what's really going on in this culture. Yes, it's going on. It's rampant. All right? And so many Christians are just checked out and they think they have to have a perfect image and a perfect idea of themselves. Well, that's called narcissism. All right? Nothing's perfect but Jesus Christ. All right? Let's get that straight. So, you don't have to be a perfect person. You have to paint perfectly. Just start doing your craft and the Lord will work in you. And don't listen to the chattering of people who just want to put you down for being an artist. My gosh, there's no perfect profession. There's no perfect profession. If we were going to pick apart being a pharmacist, we could say, look at all the people that are overdosing right now because pharmaceuticals are overprescribed, okay? We could pick apart being a pharmacist. We could pick apart being a mother. We could pick apart being a lawyer, okay? But that field of visual arts has been picked apart for centuries now. And it is time for the visual artists to emerge and have permission to go into these places. This is called Jesus Rescued a Little Child from the Pompeian Ritual. I haven't figured out how I want to paint him emotively yet. I haven't figured out this part at all, and so it's just not painted. I've been in stall mode on this painting for a long time. I do like, however, the idea of the background where I wanted to bring the past into the present in the past with this Hall of Mysteries from, it's pretty well known, Pompeian ruins. It's a very well preserved mural from that time. And it shows the ritual indoctrination and initiation of a young child into ritual abuse. And here the initiate in the mural is being given a little document, and then we'll be taken through a Bacchus. This is Bacchus here, a ritual, be intoxicated or drugged, and then ultimately be a sex slave for the wealthy people in the community. So this is flagellation scene going on right here. So, exposing what's going on in the culture, I already said that, the darkness in the culture is a valid way to be an artist. And This can be done in different ways. You can do a contrasting, dark with the light. You can also literally do two paintings side by side. There's just a lot of ways to do these things. To simply come out and document what's going on in the culture is valid. Anything's valid. There are no rules. Or if there become any rules, they should only be made by artists and thinkers, Christian artists and thinkers. They should not be made by people who own Christian bookstores or people who just think that because they read the Bible once, they're an expert. All right? I'm going to tell you some things Francis Schaeffer said. You cannot judge an artist by one piece of work. If you saw one piece of my work, all right? If you saw this one piece of work, you'd probably think I was demon-possessed, blah, blah, whatever, okay? It's not true. But this is a painting that I'm doing. It's going to be a triptych, John the Baptist, what he went through with Herod. And so I had to explain who he is, who John is, just briefly, and he'll come in later in the triptych. But who was Herod? All right, Herod. Here he is in his little throne room, and this is painted in a folk art manner intentionally, with hardly any perspective or anatomy or anything. And Herod's pleasuring himself. Salome's daughter is showing off her entire body here. Lots of sexual crap going on here. Some sodomy going on. Yes, it went on in that culture also. I'm not obsessed with that stuff. It's just, it's in our face so much. It's going on. I mean, when we have like people swinging around on wrecking balls and showing every part of themselves anatomically, and then we get into, oh my gosh, just the things that are, the known pedophile rings that are being exposed right now in Germany. It's 2020. And it's being exposed, and yet so many Christians, they want to bury their heads in the sand to what is going on in our culture right now. Now, I was saying that if anyone's going to judge, or if we're going to have a panelist of how far can we go off the cliff with our art as artists? What can we do? What can be done? Are there any limits to it as artists? It should be Christian artists, writers, and thinkers, not people who don't even know anything about the profession or anything. Now, if I had judged this guy too harshly, Old Nerdum, I would, with just one piece of his art, I'd say, well, the guy is just infatuated and glorifying death. I mean, it's like a River Styx half-dead guy in a boat, right? No, indeed. He's done a very powerful painting of the resurrection. Same thing with Dali. People judge him. Oh, he wasn't a Christian artist. Are you kidding me? He painted Christ quite magnificently a couple times. But if a worldview is so corrupt, let's say a Christian started painting this, and they had no contrasting imagery. This is a work by, I can't stand this artist. But anyway, I'll go into that in a moment. This is called The Room. A kid. He always did like naked kids and showing their underwear and stuff. He painted during the 40s. Balthus. Oh, professors at art schools for some reason just love Balthus. All right. Now, if a Christian were to paint stuff like this, and there's no contrast, or there's no before and after, or no redemption to this, okay, let me explain to you something that Francis Schaeffer said, all right? He said that in Christian work, there will most necessarily be, like a great musical composition, there will be a variety of different chords. There will be dissonant chords. There will be a big variety, but there will be an ultimate resolve, which is the hope or helping people understand what's going on. There will be that. However, there are exceptions, he said. There's an artist who painted during World War II named Kathe Kollwitz. She was absolutely a Christian. But all you see in her work was recording. She was recording horrific, in her sketches, her black and white sketches, horrific scenes of half-dead people, bodies in piles, horrible horror going on. You can't find among her entire body of work anything that had what Schaeffer would say would be the up note, all right? But the reason that artists need to paint all the scale, the full spectrum of life, is because if not, it's just a monotone image. If it were a piece of art, it would be if it were a musical piece, it would be completely boring. As a piece of art, it will not resonate with people in the culture, Christian or non-Christian, if it doesn't have all of the spectrum working. All of the spectrum, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in it. Just put it all in. Just start painting, all right? So or sculpting, or doing your art, or doing your writing. And by the way, try not, if you can, to get rid of your old work before you became a Christian, or your work that maybe is even offensive to you as you continue to progress. I did get rid of most of it. I wish I had it now as a teaching tool. I was channeling demonic imagery before I was Christian, full-on alien stuff, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, and now I have nothing to show people about how the evil one was working. Anyway, back to my graduate thesis, The Case for an Emotional Jesus in Painting. All right. Again, his emotions edited out of over 2,000 years of art for the most part. Why? This painting pretty much says it all. It shows the emotional Jesus for my thesis in a way, as an allegory for my thesis. The emotional Jesus, this painting's entitled, She Only Called Him When She Needed Him. And it's got this kind of ridiculous donut couture dress. This lady is, oh, Jesus, come tighten up my corset. Oh. So she needs him for the most mundane things. And he's frustrated here. That's the look on his face, is frustration. If you'll come in very close, please. Come in real close on that face, please. You need to get in close to see the face. Contrasted with, in this palatial room, what has been done for over 2,000 years of art, where Jesus is stoic, removed, heavenly, devoid of all emotions, pure, well-lit, light, okay? Non-emotional. But go down here to the people beneath him, and they are expressing emotions of surprise. They're exclaiming, they're, wonderment, all this. No, Jesus can't have any emotions. Let's expunge all emotions from Jesus or any work about him. All right, let's just get that done. Let's make sure that we clean up the place. Well, I tell you what, that is complete censorship. And anytime you get into a culture or a society that is going to censor things like that, censor thoughts, censor ideas, creativity, it's called a cult. And there are plenty of churches and Christians that are part of a big fat cult. That's cultish, and that is why we have not been able to see our artists take off for centuries now. Now, this is some of my rock and roll art. Who's to say that this isn't more by a Christian artist or more beneficial to people than than this right here? Who is to say that this piece of art isn't more beneficial than this? Well, you say, well, this is absolutely more beneficial. It's a painting of Jesus. Well, who knows? If you took it out of context, it's just a painting of an Italian man. It's not a painting of Jesus. We don't know what he looked like. There's historians that say since he was a Nazarene, the Nazarenes at that time had a single braid, and the rest of down their back, on the back of their head, and the rest of their head was completely shaven. Let's try to paint Jesus like that, because that is historically accurate, and we want to be accurate. Do you understand? We want to be accurate. We want to make sure we do it all correctly. No, that's ridiculous. Who's to say that this isn't more important to some people? To show Elvis, he was my kind of hero figure for a while before I started painting Jesus Christ. I'd always paint him in some kind of a heroic way. Here he's being heroic by just being himself, by showing the full gamut of his emotions. He's a bit humiliated, he's a bit sad, lonely, and scared. The Rolling Stones have come to his hotel room. Mick is smoking a doobie. They want to jam with him, so he's a little bit scared, so he goes into the bathroom and puts on the blue footy pajamas that his mama made him. Oops, the problem is he's gained a little weight, so they're a little hard to button up, and he's taking a while, and the Stones are wondering what's taking him so long. So to take the rock stars off the pedestal and show them just as regular people, maybe that's really, really important right now. Okay, I'll pause. All right, this is important. What I discovered while working on my thesis, The Case for an Emotional Jesus in Painting, is why I believe that Christian art has been stuck in a lot of categories, not only portraying Jesus as a non-emotional being, but in a lot of ways. The topic of Jesus Christ in painting has been very taboo, has been very censored by the church and all. As I did research, I realized that the Christian idea of Jesus that is being painted over and over and over is based on the classical idea of the divine, which is a stoic, non-emotional. See, they're gods and goddesses in the Greek and Roman times, all right? This is Apollo, had to do with not really relating to human beings. Now, this is not the model that we really see that's biblical, though. We see that Jesus was entirely relational. He was not stoic. He wasn't removed from people. He was incredibly engaged. And he still is. He knows exactly how people feel, what they need. But being portrayed so stoically is hampering people from even getting to know who Jesus Christ is. So for this field to be blown wide open is super important for the artist to get going, get painting Jesus, how they see him, etc., etc. My friend Jay painted this. It is called Incessant Madness. And I think this is the way it goes. It might go like, I'm sorry. I think it goes like this. It shows a brain and an arm that's being stitched up. And then there's the stitching is coming from the brain. So I think what Jay is saying here is that it's madness to try to keep stitching ourselves up. Our brain is telling us to do it, but ultimately only Christ is the healer. I believe that's what he's saying there. So anyway, here is an idea of Christ that is being presented that is not in the regulated formulas that have been prescribed for a long, long time. If we're going to stick to this non-emotional, regulated format, and if we're not going to develop artists, we're going to end up with work like this by Thomas Kincade. Happy little houses, all the lights are on. Oh boy, for a while everybody was buying Kincade's work. And there's no perspective. There's nothing good about this painting, except that he did it, and he's to be respected as an artist. But I'll tell you what, as far as this took a giant leap backwards, hundreds of years. So if you go into a museum, you will see real paintings of pastoral scenes, homes, and things. You don't have to look at these very badly painted pieces of art. Now, within the field of Christian art, we do have, I don't know who did this, but this is a pretty stunning and wonderful painting of the living creatures. Sorry, I can't give you credit for this, but it's awesome, and it inspires a lot of awe in me. There isn't very much of this going on. I'm still challenging you. This is a Christian artist right here, George Grosz, painted during World War II. You have naked women, you have Nazi soldiers, you have women exposing themselves. What the heck? This is Christian art? Absolutely. He's documenting his time for all of us to see. The corruption and the decadence that was right in front of World War II. And the Nazis and Hitler and the rise of... a culture has to be degraded to such a point before it can be taken over by the evil one. Our culture was kind of doing a lot better for several decades there, it seemed, in a lot of ways. But because of the huge storming of our gates through things that are talked about in this painting, or painted about in this painting, storming of the gates of America and the entire world through free access, easy access to pornography. Now we have 7, 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds addicted to pornography because they have easy access through the cell phones that their parents give them for safety measures or whatever, so that they can call when they're at the bus stop, whatever. Okay, so the pornography, the horror, the games are cited here. Here, cameraman, please. The games, the video games. This is a screenshot of one of the video games. Virtual reality. People are way into living in virtual reality now, where you enter these rooms and you play all day long. You play a game, and it has nothing to do with really developing the person, developing their mind, their body, their experiences, their social awareness. Nothing of it. It's all virtual. It's all virtual reality where people are living for the most part now, young people. So to get people out of this, and part of my work is jarring. It's supposed to have an impact. It's supposed, as it develops more, it will to speak to people about what's really going on as a social commentator. There's a painter that I like a lot because, and I'll quote him. He said, there are generations you can whisper to this generation you need to scream. And he painted a painting entitled Pest House, in which everybody has putrefying wounds and sores, and he is a Christian artist who's been asked to lecture a lot of different churches, I've noticed. I'm forgetting his name right now. Apologies, please. Anyway, so there is a legitimate way that if shock value actually jars the mind visually, mentally, emotionally into a state of reconsidering a subject and a topic, and that we as Christian artists can use this jarring of the mind. Now, when it's done for absolute purposes for the evil one, or it's done to just for just for shock value, or to lead people down a road that is completely decadent, like in the situation with, say, Lady Gaga. Now, God loves her and all that kind of stuff, blah, blah. I could go on about how everybody has the right, like Francis Schaeffer said. He said, don't critique or don't criticize anyone's art. It is the mannishness of man. Now, I would disagree with him on certain fronts. He didn't live in such an evil era as we do right now, with that, where I said the accessibility to evil images coming at people at about the rate of like a million shots a second now, people being bombarded so much. I would say that no, a lot of the art at this time, theater and film, needs to be kept away from people who are especially young and impressionable, because it is going to alter the entire course of their lives. Because once people take something into their minds, it can never be just deleted. God and Jesus Christ can recover someone's mind. They can. The way I look at it is they can close up that part of the mind or that memory. But deleting, God's not in the business of deleting. He'll help people handle and deal with memories. But anyway, so things that are imagined, even things that are visual stimuli, are never lost from the human mind. So the bombardment of imagery that's going on right now. Let me give you an example here. This was about 10 years ago, and it's possibly, well, I know it's a lot more as far as the money that goes into creating it and the client base and stuff. It's way above Vogue, from what I know. It's a magazine called W, and this edition came out over 10 years ago. And so over 10 years ago, I want to show you some of the imagery that people were being bombarded with. Right here, we're seeing the name of the article, and they're advertising clothes, by the way. Clothes. They're advertising clothes. It says, suiting up for a nocturnal adventure. Photographs by Stephen Klein and styled by Edward NNL. And I can't read it right now. Anyway, so let me go on here, showing you some of these images. All right. Now, these are incredibly well done images. So the craft of this, the photographic, the lighting, the ability, interestingly enough, the better, the higher someone's working at their game in doing evil imagery, the more dangerous it is. I mean, this is really dangerous in that it is so well done. So technically, I would give this an AA+++++. Beyond anything I'm seeing done in Christian art, way beyond it. Technically, this person is working at the top of their game. Let me explain this too. Now, a lot of times, if you're doing this kind of imagery, you're going to get a little boost. The devil at the crossroads, right? I mean, you're going to get boost. You're going to get elevated. This is the devil's world right now. He is the small g of this world. Adam and Eve handed over and transferred the lordship of this world to the devil for a period of time, and we're in that period. Unless you are ransomed out by Jesus Christ, well, you're in a lot of trouble. So, but people who are working for the devil's kingdom are going to have access to a lot of opening of doors, access to a lot of creative energy and power. Jim Morrison's, one of his albums, evidently, was just downloaded to him on the rooftop one night. Not that Morrison's bad, I like a lot of his work, all that kind of stuff, but he had a whole lot of occult imagery in his music and things that were happening in the music that really changed a whole generation into LSD, drug culture, etc., etc. Let me show you some more. I'll flip through these. We're almost done with this, but here we go. Here we go. Here's where we're getting to, really, is the imagery that is piled on right now in the year 2020 of death and vampirism. Now, this was about 10 years ago, probably longer, but we've already got a corpse. A beautiful woman. Beautiful woman. So the imagery is so lush, it's going to suck people in, just draw them in. Like the films that are being made now. Some of the films are being made at such a high level of resolution and the capacity for people to here's some more. I just wanted it wasn't quite done. So I think we can see the themes that are going on here: bondage, vampirism, death, possession, all this kind of stuff. In a fashion magazine. So this is in your face. So I would, if Francis Schaeffer were living today, I would, I'll bet my bottom dollar that he would say, okay, all art needs to be respected because of the mannishness of man, but I think he would say, but there are examples where we need to give a caution, kind of like they give a PG for movies or whatever, or they used to. All right, so that kind of thing. So who makes these cautions? Who makes these rules? Who decides these things? Well, certainly not the pastor at your church or you or anything, unless you're an artist, a thinker, and a writer, unless you know a lot about history, the history of art, the history of the world, the history of... Because if you start censoring things, I am going to tell you what, you are going to end up with such a low level of work because you don't know what good work is. You don't know what good artwork is. You don't know the history of art. You're only going to let in the little things that your small mind understands, and you're going to end up with Thomas Kincade versus a Rembrandt or something like this, okay? So you decide. All right, next.